So there are some disadvantages to crowns, but otherwise, they're quite important things.
What's more powerful than a crown, and why would a queen hide it from her own family? And what kind of decision could still be shaking the royal household years after her death? So yes, there are disadvantages to crowns, heavy ones. They look great in portraits, but they come with rules, expectations, and a lifetime of being watched. Still, for the British monarchy, crowns matter, symbols matter. And yet, deep inside the private archives of Windsor Castle, something surfaced that suggested Queen Elizabeth II believed something else mattered more. A sealed document, hidden, deliberate, never meant for public eyes. And when it finally came to light, it detonated like a quiet bomb inside the royal family. This wasn't about Balmoral, not Sandringham, not jewels or tiaras or anything you'd see on a banknote. This was about a private estate no one was supposed to know existed and the person the Queen chose to inherit it. Not a senior royal, not the king, not anyone connected to Camilla. It was Lady Louise Windsor, the granddaughter who stayed out of the spotlight, the one most people barely noticed. And that choice reopened rivalries, sparked fury behind closed doors, and shattered a very carefully maintained silence. So why Louise? And why did this one decision upset people more than decades of royal reshuffling ever did? Let's slow down, because this story doesn't start with drama, it starts with dust. It began during routine maintenance, nothing glamorous. One of Windsor Castle's lesser-used libraries was being reorganized. A staff member, someone with nearly 30 years of palace service, pulled an old bookshelf away from the wall, not expecting anything, just doing the job. Behind it, in a narrow recess that looked intentional, sat a leather portfolio, old, thick, embossed with the royal insignia, and sealed. Not with a modern stamp, but with wax, the kind that hasn't been used in official correspondence in years. And across that seal, a signature that needed no second guessing. This came from Queen Elizabeth herself. Now here's the thing about palace staff. They know when not to touch something, and this was very much a do not touch without witnesses situation. Protocol kicked in immediately. Senior household staff were notified. Within the hour, 3 of the Queen's most trusted former advisors were summoned, separately, quietly, each sworn to secrecy before they were even shown the portfolio. When they broke the seal and read what was inside, the room reportedly went silent. Not awkward silence, shocked silence. Because inside wasn't just a letter, it was a detailed directive written in the Queen's own hand outlining the disposition of a property that wasn't supposed to exist at all. Not listed anywhere, not referenced in any biography, not acknowledged in any official record. It was dated, witnessed, meticulously prepared, and it named Lady Louise Windsor as the sole inheritor. No shared access, no contingencies, no mention of anyone else. Just Louise. And here's what made it explosive. The document wasn't written near the end of the Queen's life. It was created 3 years before her death. This wasn't a last-minute decision made in frailty or confusion. This was planned, calm, calculated. Even senior palace officials were blindsided. People who believed they knew every corner of the Queen's private affairs suddenly realized they didn't. And when King Charles was informed, reports say he had no prior knowledge of the property either. Let that sink in. So the obvious question came first. Why hide it? If the Queen wanted Louise to have something, why not include it in her official will? Why all the secrecy? The answer, as it turned out, had everything to do with protection and with trust. But before we get there, we need to talk about what Louise inherited. Because this wasn't just land. The property sits deep in the Scottish Highlands, far from tourist trails and royal watchers with telephoto lenses. Locals had always known it as the Grey House, solid stone, quiet, a place that employed a small, loyal staff and hosted occasional visitors who came and went without fuss. No one connected it to the royal family because officially it wasn't connected. The land had been purchased in the early 1950s through a maze of trusts just after Elizabeth became queen, structured very carefully to keep it separate from the crown estate, fully private, fully personal. That part wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how completely it disappeared from public awareness. No photos, no mentions, no leaks. Staff signed confidentiality agreements that went far beyond normal palace contracts. Even the property's internal name was deliberately bland, designed to attract no attention at all. The estate covered over 200 acres. The main house had more than 40 rooms, but the real value wasn't size or scenery. It was what was inside. This was Queen Elizabeth's private archive, her personal museum, her escape hatch. Letters exchanged with her father before he became king, annotated diaries spanning her entire reign, artwork removed from public circulation for safekeeping, jewelry older than the official crown jewels collection, and correspondence, real correspondence, with figures like Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher, unfiltered, unsanitized, not written for history books. This was where the Queen kept her real thoughts. More than that, this was where she went to disappear. While Balmoral and Sandringham were known retreats, this was different. Here she walked without security hovering, she read without appointments, she cooked food she actually liked, she invited only people she wanted to see, not people protocol demanded. Staff who served there over the years all said the same thing. This was the only place they ever saw her fully relaxed. This was her real home, and she gave it all to Lady Louise. Now pause here, because if you're enjoying this slow burn kind of royal chaos, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Stories like this only get weirder the deeper you go. So why Louise? To understand that, you have to look away from the cameras. While the world obsessed over William and Harry, another relationship was forming quietly in the background. Louise had always been different, born with a visual impairment that required surgeries, raised without royal titles, educated normally. Her parents, Edward and Sophie, deliberately kept her out of the spotlight. That choice mattered more to the Queen than most people realized. Louise grew up thoughtful, curious, genuinely interested in history, especially royal history, but without any urge to turn it into a brand or a headline. She asked questions because she wanted answers, not attention. She listened, and most importantly, she never leaked anything, not once. During summer visits to Balmoral, while others treated them like obligations, Louise stayed longer, came alone, walked with her grandmother in silence without trying to fill it, spent afternoons reading instead of checking her phone. And the Queen, who had spent 70 years surrounded by people with agendas, noticed. One summer, Louise helped her organize personal papers, not glamorous, not exciting, but she treated it like opening a time capsule. She asked about letters, about photographs, about context. That's when the Queen made the decision. She needed a guardian, not of the crown, but of the truth. Someone who understood history without wanting to exploit it. Someone who valued discretion over headlines. Louise fit perfectly. The trust deepened. Louise was given unrestricted access to the Queen's personal library, something even Charles never had. By the time Louise returned to her studies that fall, the decision was already locked in. And that's when everything started to unravel. Because when Camilla's family learned the truth, it landed like a punch to the chest. They'd watched their position strengthen for years. Camilla had gone from outsider to queen consort. Her children had been gradually included. More events, more visibility. And then they realized the Queen's most personal legacy had skipped them entirely. Not just materially, symbolically. The message was brutal. This was real family, and they weren't part of it. Emotions exploded. Calls were made. Legal options were explored. Could it be contested? Could competence be questioned? The answer was no. Legally airtight, publicly radioactive. The British public reacted fast and hard. Even the suggestion of challenging the Queen's wishes caused outrage. Polls tanked, editorials burned. And then came the confrontation. A private meeting, Clarence House, supposedly calm. It wasn't. Accusations flew. Camilla suggested manipulation. Edward shut that down cold. When competence was questioned, the room reportedly froze. Sophie ended it with one sentence that reframed everything. This wasn't about inheritance, it was about trust. After that, lines were drawn. And here's the part that really explains it all. The summer of 2019. Louise spent nearly 3 months with her grandmother. Long walks, long conversations, and one question changed everything. What would happen to the Queen's private papers? Who would protect them? Who would decide what